Appeals for your help.
The multi-millionaire e-cigarettes tycoon bound, beaten and robbed.
Four people intent on causing me very serious harm.
A dog walker raped in her local park.
I was just praying that somebody would come along and be just walking along the path where I was.
And fighting extremism at home, exclusive access inside the anti-terror squads.
Behind these doors is the only team in the world dedicated to removing extremist material from the web.
Live for the next hour, this is Crimewatch. Hello and welcome to Crimewatch. We are live for the next 60 minutes with the latest crime investigations, news and appeals. The studio is full of detectives, all hoping that you can make a difference and crack their cases tonight.
Yes, and I'll have my latest collection of wanted faces, including this man, who's considered a risk to children but has gone AWOL. Plus, criminals caught in the act on CCTV. Just look at this gang of lowlifes conning their way into an 85-year-old woman's house to steal from her.
There's a leak everywhere. Water flood, the water's up this height.
We've got some great images of the four of the men involved. Let's get them locked up tonight.
And I'll have the inside story of what at first appeared to be a horribly bungled burglary, but soon became apparent was a sadistic double murder.
There was far more violence than you're used to seeing, even in a murder scene.
I've never known burglars who kill pet cats. The combination of that, the injuries, made you begin to think this is more than a burglary gone wrong.
I'm going to ask you right now to just take a look at some images and, well, I should warn you, they're pretty gruesome. You'll see that we've altered them to protect this woman's identity, but you can still see her horrific injuries. She was attacked in September last year while she was out walking her dog. She was raped and then very, very badly beaten. Worryingly, the man who did this is still out there, but with your help, we can find him tonight.
The water just went blood red. I was just covered on my face, on my hair, my head, everything. Absolutely covered in blood. My face was black and blue and I had black eyes. It was a total mess. I just went totally numb to everything. It was almost like, unless I looked in the mirror, it was like it didn't happen. But every time I looked in the mirror, it was a reminder. When I finished work, I went home, had my tea, and decided it was time to take the dog out. That park is a part of my life. I've grown up on it. I've played with my friends on there and had picnics with my mum and stuff for tea on a nice hot day. Yeah, so that park is mine. It's part of my childhood. I bumped into some other dog walkers that I know, so I said hello to them, as you do.
Hi, how are you doing? Come on.
And I just carried on and went on to do my usual walk through the park. It's a nice walk, nice and relaxing with the dog. Or it was.
What's on?
Yeah, it's 9:10. No warning. Nothing. He hit me on the side of the head and knocked me down to the floor. I was on my back and he was thumping me. I could feel the blood coming down my face and I could taste the blood in my mouth. I thought, I'm not going to be able to get away. Then he drags me off to the side. You know, anyone who says they can run, you can't because you're scared. It lasted 20 minutes. 20 minutes of him having total control. It was kind of like trying to survive. I was just praying that somebody would come along and be just walking along the path where I was. I remember seeing the bungalows at the top, just praying that someone would be near that window. But I was just wishing for it to be over.
Right, I'm off. Done.
I just wanted to get out of there. So I sorted myself out and got myself back on my feet, got the dog, and I made my way out of the park as quickly as I could. I just went to somebody's house and I banged on the door. I just crumpled onto his floor. I just remember looking at the blood dripping off me and looking at my hands. I was shaking. It took away a lot of my dignity. It took away a lot of who I was, to the point where sometimes I don't know who I am. Or my life ended as I knew it that night. This took away so much of my freedom. I'm a prisoner in my own body. Because the freedom that I had, that I knew, the freedom just to walk around and not be bothered, is gone. It's like living in a prison cell.
Well, it's clear who should be in a prison cell. DCI Mel Bowden joins me now. This is, Mel, a truly horrific attack.
You can see by the images, and these have been edited to protect the identity of the offender, but you can see the level of violence that's been used.
We heard the woman in her reconstruction there say this was a park, an area that she knew very well indeed for many, many years. Just take us through the route that she took. It is an area she knows very well. We know that at around 9:10 on Saturday, the 28th of September 2013, that the victim has entered through into the racecourse park through the Crimewatch Road side. She's walked along the footpath and she's aware of a male behind her who asks her for the time. He then punches her to the face, knocks her to the ground, and he continues to beat her and subsequently rapes her. Right, what do you think you know for sure about this violent attacker? We know that this man is white, around 20 years old, slim build, clean shaven, 5'8" to 6 foot tall. We also know that on the night he was wearing a dark hooded top, pale jeans and canvas shoes, pale canvas shoes, we think white, and we've actually got a pair of those here. They are quite distinctive, white canvas shoes that have obviously the elasticated stripes at the side. It was a public park, it wasn't that late at night, around about 9:10. Yeah. Witnesses, presumably, there must have been. The park is, there are people at the park that overlook the park that live nearby. It's an area that's really popular with dog walkers as well. It was 9:10, so although it was dark, it wasn't particularly late, so somebody will have heard something or might have seen something. And as you say, this was the evening of the 28th of September last year. 2013. DCI Bowden for now, thank you very much. It's over to you now. If you have got any idea who did this, you saw how bad it was, I would urge you to do the right thing and to come forward before he attacks someone else. Do call the studio now. You know the number. It's 0500 600 600. And remember, if you've been a victim of crime yourself, then there is the victim support line. That's on 0845 30 30 900. Let's go to Wanted Faces now with Martin.
And we start tonight with an urgent appeal from Police Scotland, who need to find 34-year-old Jonathan Kelly. He was released from prison on licence in August after serving a number of years for violent offences, but has since gone missing. Kelly, who's considered to be dangerous, uses a number of aliases, including Donald Cameron, John Kerr and Jonathan Donnelly, and may well have shaved his head or grown a beard in an attempt to disguise his appearance. He has several large scars, including one on his right arm and one across his right hand. He also has a Glaswegian accent. He should not be approached, so if you see him or know where he is, call 999 immediately. Next is Stuart Smith. The 66-year-old is a convicted child sex offender who's wanted as he's failed to tell the police where he's living. He has links to Grimsby, Folkestone, Sheffield and Pontefract, but is known to travel all over the country, particularly via train, although he may well be driving a red Ford KA with the registration YL07NKK. Smith is considered a continuing risk to children, so call the police straight away if you see him. Number 3 is Raza Aziz, who also goes by the names James Andrews and Wassim Al Mahmoud. Detectives need to trace the 28-year-old in connection with a serious sexual assault last summer. He's also wanted in relation to numerous frauds which saw at least half a dozen victims conned out of hundreds of thousands of pounds after dodgy property, land and renovations deals. He has links to Birmingham and London. And lastly, for now, is John Harrison. Detectives want to speak to the 51-year-old in connection with a large-scale conspiracy to import cocaine worth more than £5.5 million into the UK from the Netherlands. Harrison has links throughout Kent and Surrey and to the Knightsbridge and Chislehurst areas of London. He's on the short side at 5'5" tall. Now, all of the faces are on the website and available on the red button until midnight. If you know where any of them are, call and text the numbers on the screen. Text will be charged at your standard message rate.
A roundup of the latest crime news now, starting with an urgent appeal on behalf of Hertfordshire Police, who need to trace 41-year-old Nijamul Islam in connection with a horrific incident during which a woman was attacked by dogs at kennels in Great Amwell near Ware last week. The 30-year-old victim was so badly injured her arms may need to be amputated. More than 100 dogs were seized after the attack, 40 of which have since been put down because of their poor health and aggressive nature. Islam, who's from Edgware in London and has links to Manchester, has a disfigured left eye and a deformed right hand. He'd previously been banned from keeping dogs after being found guilty of animal welfare offences in 2012. Figures released today show that the number of reported rapes across England and Wales is at an all-time high, despite a fall in the total levels of crime. The Office of National Statistics report reveals a 29% increase in rape overall, with a 48% increase in knife-point rapes. The Crime Prevention Minister, Norman Baker, says police have improved their recording of these crimes and victims are now more willing to come forward. Next, just take a look at this dramatic footage of 3 masked men using a tow rope attached to their 4x4 to rip out a cash machine. It happened at the University of East Anglia in Norwich on the 2nd of December last year. The group escaped with around £10,000, but as you can see from the incredible footage, the trio didn't get very far before officers from Norfolk Constabulary caught up with them. The 3 men responsible all pleaded guilty and were jailed for their part in this and other burglaries. Next, how about this for a selfie with a difference? 26-year-old Alan Crowley from Dublin had no idea when he started taking a picture of himself every day that he'd be attacked. But after Alan was glassed in the face in a bar in Dublin in 2011, he continued to document his recovery. Now his video has recently gone viral, more than 1 million views online so far. Well, finally, Tabrez Hussein was caught banged to rights after a high-speed police chase in Middlesbrough. The 34-year-old spilt £16,000 worth of heroin over himself as he tried to throw the stash out of the window. He was jailed for 8.5 years for possession of a Class A drug and dangerous driving.
Yeah.
Of course, there is one major story that has dominated headlines in recent months. The extremist group calling itself Islamic State has seized large swathes of territory in Syria and Iraq, leading to intervention from nations across the world. Threat levels have been heightened here too, amid growing concern over what will happen when those who've gone to fight return to Britain. With many young people apparently being radicalised online, Matthew's been given exclusive access to the National Counter-Terrorism Unit, who face the enormous task of policing the internet.
The battle against terrorism is being fought on the ground, from the air and online. As extremist groups like IS turn to the internet to spread their propaganda, so too do the people trying to shut them down.
Terrorism and the risk of radicalisation is not a new threat, but what's different now is the sheer number of British people being recruited, some of whom had no previous links to extremism.
The government says more than 500 British nationals have travelled out to Syria and Iraq. Reports suggest their average age is between 18 to 29, and that many have been drawn into the conflicts by what they've seen online.
Today, social media means that if I'm a 21-year-old guy in Bradford who's thinking of going out to Syria to join the Islamic State, I can go online and find a fighter, maybe from Leeds, who's out there, who's 21, who's of the same background as me, who's fighting. And we can have a two-way conversation. And I can ask him all the things that matter to me. How did you hide this from your parents? What's it like? How did you make the transition from Turkey into Syria? So all of these concerns I have in my mind, I can now get over by having a discussion with another guy who's just like me. And that's one of the things we've noticed. The guys out there are constantly saying, we're ordinary, we're not special. If I can do it, you can do it.
So what can be done to tackle online radicalisation and the threat of extremism here? A key part of the police effort is to work with Muslim communities, the overwhelming majority of whom condemn the terrorists.
Good afternoon. I'm good, thank you, yes.
In Birmingham, Detective Chief Superintendent Sue Southern is visiting the city's largest mosque to make a direct appeal.
I need families to come forward much sooner so that we can help to slow down the number of people that are travelling. What we've been saying to communities is be aware of what your young person is doing. Are they spending more time in their bedroom on the internet? If so, what are they looking at? Recognising that reach of the jihadists through social media. Are they becoming more extreme in their narrative around what's happening in Syria or Iraq?
Some have said it's lecturing them could be counterproductive.
We've got to try it. I can't just sit back and not have that direct dialogue. We have really good relationships with the community, so we're using those relationships to further this message. What I do want is the communities to mobilise themselves, and we're seeing a lot of that.
How important is this message?
It's really important because a number of the people that are travelling have not been previously known to us. We need communities to come forward much sooner. We want to deal with the vulnerability here in the UK. We're getting calls, but they're coming too late. Young people have already travelled. That's very difficult for us to then intervene.
Coupled with these very public policing initiatives are far more sophisticated methods being used to fight extremism.
We've been given unprecedented access at New Scotland Yard to the Counter-Terrorism Internet Referral Unit. Behind these doors is the only team in the world dedicated to removing extremist material from the web.
Detective Chief Superintendent Clark Jarrett heads up the National Counter-Terrorism Units and works closely with intelligence services.
You have a global reach. Tell me what this unit actually does.
We have a team of dedicated and highly skilled detectives and police staff that search the internet using technical tools and their own experience to find and remove terrorist content.
Give me an idea of the volume of the extreme material you're seeing.
The team are removing over 1,000 items of illegal terrorist content a week from the internet. Approximately 80% of that is coming from the conflict zone in Syria and Iraq. And that's a big upstep in what we've previously seen, and it's certainly increased in the last year, and it's speeding up over the last few months.
So how are people being enticed in?
Terrorist organisations like IS are reaching out in new ways via new social media platforms into people's homes, into their bedrooms, onto their phones. IS and others have their own in-house production teams to produce some very glossy and seductive releases. They publicise bomb-making manuals, sermons, extremely violent videos from war zones in an attempt to promote their cause and encourage others to join them.
It's an avalanche of material that's coming in. It must feel to you and your team, no matter how much you're taking down, more is coming.
Absolutely. But the team are absolutely dedicated to removing as much as they can.
Yet, no matter how much police are able to take down from the net, there are hundreds of fighters already out there. The concern is what happens if and when they return to Britain.
They are getting combat training. They're being trained in the use of IEDs. They're being radicalised by the Islamic State and other organisations. They then pose a significant threat to the UK when they come back, if they choose then to look at attack planning within the UK.
It just takes 4 people, 5 people to wreak a great deal of havoc. So terrorism doesn't require numbers on its side. It just requires 1 or 2 individuals to get through on a particular day.
Well, with me now is the UK's most senior counter-terrorism officer, Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. I know you've got a very busy job. The terror threat has risen to severe since August. There are an estimated 500 UK nationals who are abroad in Syria and Iraq deciding to fight for whatever they believe their cause is. What is your plan once these dangerous radicals decide that they want to come back to Britain? What are you going to do?
We have to look at them as terrorists. That's what they are. Going out and fighting with ISIS is terrorism. People coming back to this country, we will often already have some evidence against them from before they've travelled out. When they get back, they often get arrested and they get prosecuted. We're charging increasing numbers of people in this country with terrorism offences, some relating to what they did overseas, and we're also disrupting an increasing number of plots in the country.
It's very interesting that you say these are individuals for whom you may have had more than suspicions, but evidence was the word you just used. Some people might wonder, well, you're shutting the door after the horse has bolted. If you had evidence on them before they left, why are they not already arrested and charged?
I didn't say evidence before they left, unfortunately. We've got evidence since they've left. So what we need, and it's one of the things we want to talk about tonight, what we need from the public is early warning about people who've been drawn into radicalisation. You saw on the film about how the internet and very professional propaganda is being used by ISIS and other organisations to try and draw new people into terrorism. We're getting increasing referrals from families, increasing signs of confidence in us, telling us about concerns about their children, their relatives, their friends. But if that report comes after they've left the country, we can gather evidence, but we're not going to be able to intervene until they come back.
What about the current daily threat then? You've got plenty of officers, you've got a very reasonable budget. What evidence is there for the public that you are making things better right now, day to day?
Day to day, we're arresting more people. This year, we're arresting more people month on month. We've done for a long time. We're disrupting more plots. We're also trying to be more preventative as well. So we're going after the people in communities who are acting as fundraisers, acting as recruiters, acting as spokespeople for ISIS, because they, alongside the social media products and things that you've seen in the film, that together is what's drawing new people into terrorism. So we have to tackle them as well.
It's a very big ask, isn't it, to say to British Muslim families, if you have a suspicion, if you have a worry, no matter how small, come to us, the police force, and turn your son or daughter in before they get into really big trouble. That's a very big ask. It's
a very big ask. We have seen dozens in recent months, dozens of families come to us and make exactly that comment. They are so concerned. We can all see it's completely awful what's going on in Syria. And anyone wants to prevent their friend, their relative, their son, their daughter from ending up there. Sometimes they come forward soon enough, we can intervene and prevent it, and other times they've gone and it might be too late for that child, but they may have siblings that the family are worried about.
Very briefly, one word, are you confident you and your team are on top of this?
We're on top of it, and can I say there's 3 pieces of help we need. We need help on websites, we need help identifying problem people in communities, and we need help who are the people recruiting and training people, encouraging people to go overseas.
More than a word, but I know why you did it. Thank you
very
much. That was Assistant Commissioner Rowley there. You can report online terrorist material at www.gov.uk/report-terrorism or any suspicious activity to the anti-terrorist hotline 0800 789 321. Right, still to come tonight, the terrifying raid at the home of a self-made millionaire.
Get in there! Get in there!
The one place that I cherish as being safe is my home.
Tell me where the gold is!
And it destroyed that, really. And that's a greater offence than anything that was taken.
Well, that's coming very soon, but first Martin has got his latest batch of CCTV.
Yes, some really nasty ones tonight, starting with a sickening crime against an 85-year-old woman in her own home. Watch, and unusually for CCTV, listen carefully. This is inside the home of a disabled pensioner in northwest London on a Friday afternoon in August. You can see someone's keen to find out if anyone's home, peering through the letterbox, trying the door handle, and even attempting to force it open. The noise alerts the lady who lives in the house. She opens the door to two men who tell her they need to come in as there's been a flood next door.
There's a leak everywhere. Water flood, the water's up this height.
When she refuses, they barge in, almost pushing her over. One of them orders her into the lounge where he rips off her jewellery, while the other makes his way upstairs. A few seconds later, two more men arrive. The gang search the house, one of them warning the others to watch out in case the victim has a panic alarm.
Make sure she hasn't got a panic in around her neck.
When they realise she does, they scarp her.
Panic button in it. What? Panic button. No way.
What a despicable bunch of thieves, targeting a vulnerable pensioner in her own home. One of them was possibly called Gomi. Tell us who he and his low-life mates are tonight. It's just after midnight on a Friday in August inside a takeaway shop in Bishop Stortford in Hertfordshire. A man and a woman have become involved in an argument with two men who are waiting for their food. The row continues for a good few minutes. The man in the pale top walks away briefly, giving us a nice shot of his distinctive tattoo. The woman and the shorter guy keep arguing when suddenly the man in the pale top lashes out at her friend, punching him over and over again. The guy in the darker top holds the woman back as the bigger man pushes the victim onto the floor, where he repeatedly stamps on his face. The two men then leave. We need names for the tattooed attacker and his mate. Who are they? A Renault Megane waits at the junction of Fermoy and Harrow Roads in West London very early on a Wednesday morning in July. The 64-year-old driver, who's on his way to Ramadan prayers, hesitates when he becomes aware of a couple having a heated argument. The man walks up to the car and starts shouting at the pensioner. He then launches a savage attack through the car window, repeatedly punching the victim to the face. The pensioner staggers out of his car, bent double by the pain of his injuries. The woman, who's with the attacker, hesitates for a few seconds before the pair of them leave, walking off up Harrow Road. The elderly victim suffered a fractured eye socket and may lose his sight. Now, it's not a great picture, but someone knows who was responsible for this vicious, unprovoked attack. Name, please. A balding man wearing trainers has asked to try on an expensive tag watch at a jeweller's in a shopping centre in Harrow on a Thursday morning in August. The shop assistant kindly does it up for him, but as soon as it's on his wrist, the reason for those trainers becomes clear. She tries to grab him, but he's too quick, sprinting off into the shopping centre. The clock's ticking. It's time for you to name this speedy watch thief tonight. If you need another look, all the CCTV is on the website. Call and text the numbers on screen if you can help. Calls are free from most landlines. Some networks and mobile operators will charge.
Now, just a few years ago, 48-year-old Jason Cropper was, he was scraping by on benefits, living in a rented one-bedroom house. But then he spotted potential in the emerging e-cigarettes market. After a lot of hard work, he became a millionaire many times over. But surely no money will ever compensate for the peace of mind he's lost since a masked gang raided his home.
13 years ago, I was living in a one-bedroom rented house, and I've pulled myself up by myself. It's not like I've had a silver spoon, you know. There's been tough times in my life, and I've worked extremely hard to produce for myself the life that I want. I've always been a bit of, you know, maybe a rolling stone, people might say. I've lived in lots of different places. I've never stayed put for longer than 2-3 years in any particular house. But this place, it's a beautiful place to live. I've lived in this house for 3.5 years. I live alone. It's a mad world out there, and you know, the business world is a mad world, and when I actually get here and coming through the gate, I find it very tranquil.
Once again, the people whose job it is to protect this country.
That night, I'd ordered an Indian takeaway, delivered probably at about 10:30, and I ate it watching Newsnight. Once I'd finished the meal, I then went and sat in another chair and switched my computer on. And then my cat was meowing, which prompted me to get up and open the door further for her to go out.
What's wrong, eh? Come on, then.
I noticed the porch door was ajar. I then opened the door further and stepped outside. I thought they were here to kill me. I didn't know who they were. 4 people who seemed intent on causing me very serious harm. I got dragged further into the house.
Get in there! Get in there! Where's the gold? I know you've got gold. Tell me where the gold is.
In the reading room.
Where's the cash?
Car keys and wallet in the lounge. Just take them.
Where's your bunker?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I got a towel placed on my head.
Take the car. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Then I got liquid was poured all over me, which started to burn.
No, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's burning!
And I thought they're going to set me on fire.
No, please!
I found out almost certainly it was bleach that had been poured on me.
I've got them! Come on! Don't you even think about calling the police, understand?
As soon as I'd heard the car drive off, I pulled myself into the kitchen.
Alpha Car 3, you can show us down at this location now. There's a guy there, sir. Yeah.
The one place that I cherish as being safe is my home. And it destroyed that, really. And that's a greater offence than anything that was taken. And they don't even have the guts to take the mask off and let me see who they are. They're gutless.
Well, DI Paddy O'Neill from Lancashire Police is leading on this one. You are convinced that somebody watching Crimewatch tonight knows who did this?
Yes, the offender stole a large amount of money, about £95,000, as well as other items. I'm convinced they will have told somebody about that. The victim quite quickly recovered from his physical injuries. But the psychological impact has been far more significant on him.
We saw that these attackers, you know, they said some pretty strange, unusual things to Jason.
Yeah, they asked him about where his bunker was, which he didn't quite fully understand, and they also asked him about where his Skyline was, which is a car that he had in his garage. And
And it was the case, wasn't it, that although now he stepped up security and that there are no valuables in the property, a lot of very expensive stuff was stolen. Can you just take me through the details of that?
Yes, there were 2 gold bars stolen that were worth about £24,000 each. Some other items, obviously the cash, and 3 watches. A blue chrono Omega Seamaster watch worth about £7,000, another Omega Seamaster watch worth about £2,000, and a Breitling Sky Racing watch worth about £4,000. They've all got serial numbers on and they're easily identifiable.
Yeah, people can check out the serial numbers on our website. Tell us then about his car, the Range Rover.
Yes, it was abandoned about half a mile away on Goosefoot Lane. We believe the offenders transferred into another car to make off. The Range Rover was completely burnt out, and there was some poor quality CCTV that showed the offenders getting into a pickup type truck that had spotlights on the back, facing backwards on the cab. We would ask anyone who saw that vehicle travelling around that night, or anyone who they think had access to a vehicle like that and could have been involved, to contact us. OK, DI Paddy O'Neill, thank you very much for now. Well, if you know anything about what happened to Jason or have been offered any of the items that were stolen, please do contact us now. It is 0500 600 600 as usual in the studio, or of course you can speak anonymously to Crime Stoppers. They're on 0800 555 111.
More faces now, starting with this pair, Ibrahim Abdul Rahman and Abdul Ramu Chamu. Detectives need to find them in connection with the rape of a 15-year-old girl in Doncaster in 2008. 33-year-old Abdul Rahman also uses the first name Jamie and has links to Lincolnshire. Chamu is 27. Both men are Sudanese and in the country illegally. 7 is Helio Andre, who is also known as Tobe. Police want to trace the 21-year-old in connection with a £1 million conspiracy to supply crack cocaine and heroin across Merseyside and Cheshire. Andre, who's a former professional footballer, usually wears Liverpool or Burscough FC branded clothing, as you can see here in this police surveillance footage. Now, he has scars from stab wounds on his back and legs, and links to Liverpool, Chester, Wigan, Portsmouth, Amsterdam and Angola. And finally, we have Lee Doyle. Police want to find him after an 83-year-old woman was burgled while she was at home. The victim's handbag containing cash and bank cards was stolen. The cards were later used to withdraw hundreds of pounds from her account. 29-year-old Doyle has links to Botley and Tame in Oxfordshire and to Weston-super-Mare. Call and text the usual numbers if you recognise any of tonight's faces. And of course, they're all online and on the red button.
So still to come tonight, how a horrific double murder was solved thanks to a Crimewatch appeal and an eagle-eyed 8-year-old boy.
Dad, look what I found!
I'll never forget it, to be quite honest with you. There was a young detective came through and said, boss, we think we've found the victim's mobile telephones.
But first, let's get the latest on the leads you're giving us with tonight's cases. Here's Matthew.
Well, good calls coming in on that Mansfield rape. Let's talk to the officer in charge of this one. And Mel, what has actually come in?
Yeah, we've had some really encouraging calls in relation to that distinctive footwear, to the clothing, and we've actually had one call that's named a potential offender for us. I must stress, we'll be following all of these up, but I must stress this was an incredibly violent attack. The offender will have blood on his clothes, he will have blood on those shoes, those distinctive shoes. Somebody knows who he is. It's so important that we receive those calls.
I'll let you get back to the calls, Detective. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Right, some updates on previous appeals now, starting with excellent news on a case we featured at the start of the year. You may remember a 33-year-old woman was robbed and seriously sexually assaulted in a caravan in North Lanarkshire whilst her fiancé was at work. Well, following the appeal, 2 people came forward and told police they had found a gun, a mobile phone and some clothing near to where the couple's stolen BMW was recovered. Those items led police to 47-year-old Thomas Feeney from Airdrie, and 2 weeks ago he was found guilty of the attack and sentenced to 12 years in prison. A great result, and yet another example of the difference your calls make.
Now, news about one of our faces. This is Michael McCarthy. The 59-year-old was wanted in connection with the sexual assault of a 13-year-old girl. Police had been looking for him for 9 years, but after his mugshot was shown on Crimewatch, locals from a pub in London where he had been working as a DJ recognised him and contacted the police. He was arrested, and last month he pleaded guilty to 2 counts of sexual activity with a child and was jailed for 18 months. Excellent news.
In our last programme, we asked for your help after a violent burglary in South Street in Kent in July, during which husband and wife Jazz and Rani Uppal were badly beaten. Well, following the appeal, 3 men, aged 21, 31 and 32, and a 34-year-old woman were arrested in connection with that incident. All 4 are currently on police bail. We're going to update you on that one when we can.
Next, news on a case we first featured 4 years ago. 68-year-old grandfather Barry Rubery died after being tied up and beaten at his home in the village of Iron Acton near Bristol in April 2010. Well, 3 weeks ago, 2 men, one aged 19, the other 31, were arrested on suspicion of Mr. Rubery's murder. They are currently on bail. Police are still investigating the case, and anyone with any information should contact Avon and Somerset Police on 0117 945 5815.
Finally, this is Robert Knight, who has appeared on Crimewatch a couple of times. Police have been trying to locate him for 6 years on suspicion of being connected to a large-scale conspiracy to supply cocaine. Well, 3 weeks ago, 53-year-old Knight, who is originally from Walsall in the West Midlands, was arrested at a Spanish bar whilst he was in the middle of a poker game. You couldn't make it up.
More CCTV now, starting with a shocking attempt to steal a woman's car in Oldham, which happened just a few weeks ago. A woman drives her Audi Q3 up to the barrier of her work car park on a Friday morning. She gets out to unlock the padlock, leaving the engine running and the door open. While she's out of the car, a man in a dark hoodie runs up to it and climbs in. The victim realizes what's happening and tries to sprint back to her car. They struggle, and he even attempts to reverse off, dragging her with him. The car rolls forward, with the victim still grappling with the man inside. He eventually gives up and runs off. Luckily, the victim wasn't seriously hurt. An audacious and dangerous incident. Name this thwarted thief. Outside an off-licence in Moxley and Walsall in the West Midlands on a Monday morning in May. 2 men walk into the shop, one wearing a grey hoodie and the other a lovely hat and sunnies combo. Very Ali G, mate. The guy in the grey picks up a bottle of wine and approaches the counter before launching it at the shop assistant. As he does, his mate in the shades gets behind the counter and pushes the cashier into the corner. After a bit of fumbling, they eventually get into the till and empty it of notes. But the guy in the grey isn't done, hurling a large bottle of vodka at the victim before legging it with another. Exactly a week later, and the pair are at it again, inside a convenience store in Darrelston, also in Walsall. Now, their clothes may be different, but the routine is the same. And this time, it's the shorter guy in the sunglasses. He's selected his wine and is standing by the counter. Suddenly, he lashes out, trying to hit the cashier with the bottle. His mate, wearing a cap, then joins in, but the quick-thinking shop assistant grabs a wooden pole and fights back. The scuffle spills over onto the shop floor, where the trio struggle. The man in the cap leaves the victim and his mate to it and heads back behind the counter, where he rips out the cash drawer. The pair then scarper. A shocking level of violence, all for the sake of a few £100s. We need you to name these thugs tonight. A couple walk into a jeweller's shop in Barnstable in Devon on a Saturday afternoon in June. A few seconds later, 2 snazzily dressed young men join them. The older man and the woman are each holding a pile of £20 notes. The woman asks to see a variety of gold chains from the window. She handles a few of them and secretes one under the money she's holding, before slipping it into her pocket. While the older pair engage the shop assistant, the 2 younger men turn their attention to an unlocked cabinet. They repeatedly take items and put them into their pockets. 1, 2, 3, 4. The youngsters then leave, taking their loot with them. The older couple ask the shop assistant to package up several items which they say they'll come back to buy later, before they too leave. In total, these 4 nicked jewellery worth more than £5,000. Take a look and tell us who they are. If you can name anyone featured in tonight's CCTV, please get in touch in the usual ways. And of course, all the information is on the website.
Now, we meet a lot of seasoned detectives on this programme who've seen pretty much the worst that humans can do to each other. But every so often, a case comes in that has the power to shock even them. Matthew takes up the story now of how one such crime was solved, the brutal murder of 2 young students in Newcastle.
The body found wrapped in a duvet was Si Zhu, known as Cici. Her boyfriend, Zheng Xuing Yang, known as Kevin, was also found dead in the flat. Both had been savagely murdered.
It was quite obvious from a very early stage that there were no obvious suspects and there were no great clues leaping at you from the very beginning.
Cici and Kevin were both 25. They'd come to the UK to study at Newcastle University, where they'd met. Both were planning to return to China. The autopsies indicated the couple had been killed 2 days before their bodies were discovered. It also revealed a disturbing picture of how the couple died and the sadism of their killer.
There was far more obvious violence than you're used to seeing even in a murder scene. There was a gag stuffed into her mouth, so she would have had extreme difficulty breathing. Kevin had received a large number of head injuries, in excess of 50.
With Cici having been strangled and Kevin seemingly tortured for a number of hours, detectives knew the man they were hunting was extremely dangerous.
At the crime scene, it was established that a laptop and mobile phones had been stolen, and there was yet more macabre discoveries. The couple's cat had been drowned and left in a bucket under the sink.
I've never known in 25 years burglars who kill pet cats, and then the combination of that, the injuries, then made you begin to think this is more than a burglary gone wrong.
Just when the search teams thought the scene couldn't throw up any more surprises, they made another strange discovery.
There's something I think you should come and have a look at.
There was a pair of khaki-coloured trousers, and they were a size 36-inch waist. Kevin was a 31-inch waist, so they quite clearly weren't Kevin's. And they were heavily blood-stained, and the distribution of the blood staining was suggestive that they were probably worn by the murderer.
The trousers were rushed off for urgent DNA analysis. Tests returned not only a full DNA profile of the wearer, but revealed the person they were looking for was also Chinese. The profile was run through both the UK and Chinese DNA databases, but there wasn't a match on either.
We had the probable profile of the murderer, but we didn't know who it was, and that's obviously where the hunt is on now, to try and identify the wearer of the trousers and who shed that DNA.
Detectives combed through Cici and Kevin's lives, studying their internet and phone usage, interviewing family and friends, and trawling through their finances, all in the hope it would give some clue as to who had killed them and why.
It became apparent that both Kevin and Cici were involved in an internet betting scam. I think over a 2 or 3 year period, I think something like £200,000 went through the accounts. But that's not to say that Cici and Kevin benefited from those sums of money. The murderer might not have known that. The murderer might have thought they were making substantial sums of cash out of that, and that could have been a motive for why they were killed.
Detectives also discovered that Cici and Kevin had advertised a room to rent a few weeks before they were killed.
And we know that on the evening before the murders took place, that Kevin had been in contact with his mum, and he'd suggested that they'd actually rented the room out to a lodger.
But if someone had moved in, who were they and where were they now? The search for the mystery lodger became the central focus of the investigation. detectives turned to Crimewatch.
What we do know is Cici telephoned a friend days before the murder. She was uncomfortable with this Chinese lodger, very uncomfortable.
Dad, look what I found!
What police didn't know was a couple of days before the programme went out, a boy had found a plastic bag hidden half a mile from the murder scene. 2 days later, his family saw the Crimewatch appeal.
Sam, go and get that mobile with the pictures on.
I'll never forget it, to be quite honest with you. There was a young detective came through and said, boss, we think we've found the victim's mobile telephones. We discover a text message, and that text message was absolutely crucial to the investigation. The text message had been sent the evening before the murders, and it was a text message from Cici's phone to the lodger.
The lodger's phone was a pay-as-you-go, impossible to trace using the usual technology. So detectives turned to a surprisingly simple method to get their next clue.
They simply typed the telephone number into a Google search engine, and bingo, up came the telephone number.
The number was contained in a response to an online ad for a flat share. It didn't give a name, but it did list an address close to the murder scene. When they questioned the occupant, they found the mystery lodger had rented a room there, but had moved out just 2 weeks earlier. What seemed very strange is that days after moving into that address, the lodger had still wanted to rent Kevin and Cici's room.
Is this the lodger? Is this the murderer?
This is the man the person renting the room online described to the police. But where was he now?
He made a bit of a mistake, and he gave the occupants a new telephone number, a number that we previously had not had.
With a new phone number, police were now able to trace the mystery lodger, and it led them to the market town of Morpeth, 15 miles north of Newcastle. Armed with a new description, they sent a team to try to find him.
Within literally half an hour, one of the surveillance commanders rings me and says, boss, you're not going to believe this. There's a Chinese guy wearing spectacles, identical to the description.
The next morning, nearly 3 months after the murders, an arrest team arrived at his door.
Police, 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 police!
The mystery lodger was finally revealed as 30-year-old Guang Hui Sao.
He never showed any sort of real signs of stress that I've seen before with other suspects. He certainly gave the impression that he wasn't massively concerned with whatever we did have to throw at him, and I think he fully expected to be walking away fairly shortly.
What Sao didn't know was that police had his trousers and his DNA.
The DNA profile from the swab from Sao's mouth is compared against the waistband of the trousers. Bingo.
These trousers are covered in the blood of Kevin.
When the challenges were getting too much for him and he'd actually ran out of things he could come up with, he started to laugh.
Why is it making you laugh?
为什么你笑?
我觉得很可笑.
I think this is laughable.
That's laughable.
Extreme arrogance, I would say, and showed that he really did not care about anything that had happened to the victims, I think.
In 2009, the case was brought before Newcastle Crown Court. Thanks to overwhelming evidence, Sao was found guilty by a unanimous verdict of both murders and sentenced to a minimum of 33 years.
What really drove Sao to kill those two people in the circumstances that he did, because this just wasn't a killing, it was an assassination, really, wasn't it? And you don't do that for reasons that are just purely driven, I don't think, by financial motive.
Unless Sao decides to talk, we may never know why he killed Cici and Kevin.
Horror story. Just tell me a little bit more about the reasons, the possible reasons behind all of this.
Well, we know fragments, but not the whole story. The judge said he was convinced this was an execution. He said the couple had in some way crossed a large criminal gang and were punished by them. They were held up as an example and murdered in a cruel and savage way. Now, detectives think the pair were working for a Chinese betting syndicate. It's big business in China, even though gambling is illegal. Just to give you some idea, betting on the English Premier League football is worth around £40 billion in China. So cross them and you're in real trouble.
Cool as a cucumber he looked there when he was in custody. What about this guy, So? What more do you know?
Well, very little. He came into the country in 2001 on a student visa. He stayed beyond his welcome, so eventually he was in the country illegally. Was he a contract killer? Probably. Could they prove it? No, even though they travelled to China and investigated links with triad gangs.
And totally devastating for the families of these young students.
Really devastating. Remember, in China there is a one-child policy, so both these families lost their only child, lost their future. Now, Cece's father said it was like the sky falling in on them, and Kevin's mother said we have been sentenced to hell. Absolutely agonising for them.
Thank you, Matthew. Just got time for a final check on the calls. Here's Martin.
Well, the phones just haven't stopped all night. Real sense of excitement in the studio with all the calls that are coming in. Let's have a look at wanted face number 2, Stuart Smith, the convicted child sex offender. Dozens of calls coming in on this, all placing him in areas where officers know he has links. Those sightings within the last week. And Raza Aziz, wanted face number 3. Officers have had significant leads on this, all of which are being followed up now. That is outstanding news.
Busy, busy, that's everything for now. But remember, all of tonight's appeals, including the instant room phone numbers, are on the Crimewatch website. The wanted faces and CCTV are also available on the red button until midnight, and you can follow the progress of the cases on Twitter. The phone lines are going to stay open until midnight tomorrow. We're going to be back with an update after the news tonight. That's at 10:35. The viewers in Northern Ireland are going to have to wait until 11:10. But for now, from everyone here on the programme, thanks for your calls. They make a difference. Bye-bye.